Welcome to the Abe Legal hosted podcast, where we are diving into the questions of whether or not AI can be used to solve the challenges of youth violence, of affordability issues that make the cost of living just too damn high for many people, especially in the nation's capital, and the issue of statehood. I am the host, attorney Talib Karim Muhammad, and I am happy to be here with an outstanding STEM educator all the way from Howard University, where we are celebrating the Howard University homecoming. And we want everyone who has not already done so to join us by visiting the website that we have at abe.legal and signing up for the wonderful Howard University Homecoming Summit. It's an opportunity to network, an opportunity for folks to reconnect. If you are from Howard University community, or if you are just a DC native, or are you a DC resident, or are you just interested? A lot of folks think you have to have a certain connection to Howard, but I believe that we all have a connection to Howard. So you are welcome to join us tomorrow from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, 5:30. And we are looking forward to having some outstanding individuals who are going to share with those gathered their vision on how we can re-engineer DC. When we say re-engineer, as an engineer myself, hundred carjackings, almost 3,200 carjackings between 2018 and 2024. DC failed them. So we're talking about a combination of over 5,000 times and minimum, not to mention the other crimes that take place in DC, in which DC is not working. And so that is what we are discussing. And we welcome you all to join us and to get involved as we take this crises head on. We're not looking just to, support the surging of National Guard, although we do need more law enforcement, that's without a doubt. But we need to solve the underlying issues, and that's what we're talking about today. So without any further ado, let me bring on my special guest, Dr. Joseph Isaac. How are you, Doc?
Brother Kareem, I'm great. I'm a you look you outdressed me. I figured I would wear something in for homecoming, something Howard related. But I'm it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That reminds me, of jacket actually reminds me of a jacket. Before I came to Howard, I was at the Air Force Academy. We had like little, windbreaker jackets just like that. So I was like, man, that's very cool. I'll have to buy one of those and sport it with my boys from the academy, which one of them hopefully will be joining us. And that's Captain Ray Robinson, who's a pilot with UPS and a former commander of the Memphis Air National Guard. So we're looking forward to him. And we're also looking forward to you, Dr. Joseph Isaac. So tell me, Dr. Isaac, if you were giving an elevator pitch about yourself, describing your kind of book, The Making of Dr. Joseph Isaac. Um, Give me a little, 3-minute kind of summary, if you will, from, when you were 17 until now. Go
Whoa,
for it.
17. Wow. Okay. Well, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. I was born here in DC. I was born at Howard University Hospital. Actually, when it was called Freedman's Hospital, I was one of the last Freedman's babies before the new hospital was built. Grew up, my formative years were in Virginia Beach, and then came back to come to Howard in 1989. My major was biology. Had no intentions on being a teacher whatsoever. I graduated from Howard and took a job as a lab tech for the government. So I did that for a few years, and someone had convinced me to give teaching a try, and I did. I fell in love with it. Um, Taught in DC for 10 years, 8 of those years with DCPS. Those 8 years specifically at McKinley Technology High School, which is right up the hill on First and T. I was department chair of biotechnology, so that was an honor. Um, then I was selected to be an Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellow at the National Science Foundation for 2 years. During that time, yep, during that time, I started my doctoral program, and now I am a STEM education consultant and adjunct professor at the Howard University School of Medicine, where I teach all of these science education courses for pre-service teachers.
Excellent. And so tell me a little bit about, your role specifically as a STEM educator. You were working in DC public schools, which we know, I've been a lecturer at McKinley Tech, and that's one of the better schools. But
Yeah.
I can ask you, what are the challenges with even dealing with the discipline of our youth inside of those school buildings? I mean, you have a lot of committed educators like yourself, but
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges that you've seen firsthand?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have taught at McKinley, which was a not a neighborhood school. It was a magnet school. You had to apply, you had to interview to come in. But even yet, and still, it was a school, and it was a high school, and so at high school, you're dealing with high school issues that most high schools in the country undergo. Just teenagers. With that being said, I do believe we did some really special things there. Most of our children, most of our students went on to 4-year colleges and universities. I'm sure if we extrapolated the data, our college graduation rate would be well above the DCPS average. Um, and with that being said, it was one of those things where you did, as a teacher and at McKinley, you did understand that there is a difference between the population in which you were serving and the population that that usually attends a lot of the neighborhood schools. Um, and a lot of that had to do with resources. We were very well resourced school because we got um, a lot of our money came from CTE, career and technical education, and so we were a lot more kitted out, shall we say, at McKinley than other schools. And so with that, we were fortunate to give our students that sort of head start, that seat at the table, in which most students in DC and DCPS in particular sometimes lack. I know things have changed significantly since I left the classroom in 2012. But uh, being that I keep my ear to the ground and keep my relationships open with a lot of former colleagues, a lot of those issues still persist in DCPS, where it comes to just access, um, giving students that seat at the table, that access that other students in some of the surrounding counties have, that our students may not have.
Now, when you talk about access, you talk about resources. And one of the things that we have seen is how parents are challenged just by the high cost of living in DC.
Yeah.
You think about, let's say, a parent working at a uh, kind of retail level, low skill job. Let's say working at one of our favorite places to shop. You mentioned you live down the street from Whole Foods, for example, right? So in Whole Foods, people make. I think in DC there's a minimum of like $22 per hour. But you're looking at that. You're looking at a take home of about $1,200 a every 2 weeks, $1,200, which only if you look at $1,200, that amounts to about $2,400 per month at most, right? And that's if you work full time, which problem is that a lot of these employers like Whole Foods don't like to put people on as full-time workers. So they're only working part-time, between 30 hours. So let's just say your take home might be around $2,200, $2,400 at most. You can, and you have two children, right? So you need at least a 2-bedroom home or 2-bedroom apartment in DC. So if you are only making on a monthly basis for that job, the amount that you need to pay for rent, how do you pay for utilities? How do you pay for food? How do you pay for gas? So that means generally you got to work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, and, if you think about that, it's a full-time job to raise a child, let alone multiple children, including homework and picking them up after school and taking them to any extracurricular activities, which they should. Every child should have some type of extracurricular activity. And so literally you only have time to pay, if you're working 3 jobs, to come home and get some sleep before you have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and get to the next job. And so it's not to advocate anybody's responsibility, because we all have to take responsibility for our children. But the high cost of living in DC makes success as a parent out of reach for almost everybody except the wealthy elite, or people like you and your wife probably are able to. But people who are somewhat more well-to-do than the average worker in DC. We're talking about people out of the 700,000 people, probably around 500,000 of them are in that rank, if you will, right? With the rest of the 200,000 being people like yourself. So what do you think about how do we address that, and how that played out every day, I would imagine, while you were teaching?
So it's interesting that you say that. I teach a course this semester at the School of Education in urban education, and what I did this semester is I went back to something that I was taught in my education classes, coming up, getting my master's and then my doctorate, and that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there's this pyramid of and when you look at the pyramid and you look at how it's split up, you can deduce why certain things are not being met at certain levels. Now, and this goes back to exactly what you're saying in terms of access and pay rate and how expensive it is to live in DC. If the physiological needs are not met and the safety and security needs are not met, then it is increasingly more difficult for a parent to provide that child with those other needs that are higher in the pyramid, like loving and belonging and esteem, because so much time and energy is being put into survival. And so you're trying to keep a roof over your head, you're trying to keep food on the table, you're trying to keep your lights on, your bills paid. And so that in itself takes up so much of a lot of our parents' energies and time, that they simply, they send their kids to schools and basically are like, here, you take them, you because I'm doing all I can, you take them and try and make something more than what I have humanly possible. And that is really the job of, that becomes the job of a lot of our teachers, a lot of our administrators, is trying to fill in a lot of those hierarchical needs, for our children to be successful. And therein lies the challenge, right? Because and it was really interesting. Every class I was doing within urban education this semester, I would bring it back to that pyramid, and I'm like, are those basic needs being met? Because if they're not, then it's going to be very difficult for you as an educator to expect the most out of a child in your classroom. And so that goes in education, and then obviously, since education is a microcosm of society, that will inevitably affect how parents are able to provide for their children and give them those necessary supports for them to be successful doing, and whether it be education or whether it be career wise or any of those things, to basically provide for that next generation following through.
And I really appreciate that. And if you have any comments for Dr. Isaac, don't hesitate to drop them into the comment section. But the challenge, though, is we look at what it's like to teach in a public school. You not only teach in public schools, but you teach teachers who are teaching in public schools. What are some of the specific challenges that if I, as an engineer, wanted to go engineer turned lawyer, but if I said, okay, I want to go and teach, in DC public schools, what do I need to be prepared for? The reality.
So I know that journey personally. When like I said, I was at Howard. I was a biology major. Had no intentions on being in the classroom. When I decided to be a teacher, I went through the public charter route at first for my first 2 years there, and the only reason they hired me was because I had this science background. And 3 weeks before the school year started, I was literally thrown into this sort of cauldron of let's teach you how to be a teacher. Like, the science, but you don't know how to teach. And so I had to learn that. And so I always tell my school of education students, as pre-service teachers, you guys are learning that before you get into the classroom, whereas I was kind of thrown into the fire and had to learn it on the way. It's almost like, you're building the plane while it's in the air type analogy. And, luckily and I was blessed enough to have an aptitude for it and to have a love for it. So, but not everybody has that. And I say that to say that you have to have, if you're coming into the teaching profession as a second career teacher, is what they call it, you have to have a passion and a love for the profession and a love for who you are teaching. Because if not, it'll chew you up and spit you out quite quickly. And I've seen it. Teaching is not a forgiving profession. It is a very rewarding profession, but it is not forgiving. And if you're not prepared to roll up in that classroom, especially in specific environments, I always say, children might be undereducated, but they're not dumb. Children are extremely smart, and they are very intuitive, and they know, especially, in the upper grades, they know when you don't have what you need to have. They know when they are being lied to. They know when you are blowing smoke, and they'll call you out on it. I love them for it, but some people who went into this profession didn't survive as a result, because they weren't prepared for the smoke that they were going to get once stepping into that classroom. You have to grow some thick skin. You got to be ready. You have to know your stuff, and you also have to be humble enough to know that you don't know everything. And like I always told my students, I'm like, you know what? I learned as much from you as you learned from me, and that's how it should be, right? And that's to me, that's what makes really dynamic educators, is being open to learning from your students as much as you impart wisdom to them.
Interesting that you talk about that, because it sounds like underneath the role as an educator, you have to first and foremost convey to your students that you genuinely care about their well-being.
Yes.
You love them,
Yep.
As your
Absolutely.
own children.
Yep. Absolutely.
And talk me through how that type of relationship is established, especially in what could be a very toxic environment in a DC public school in particular.
The word you
how do you do
said,
that?
the key word right there was relationship. Teaching is nothing but relationship building. Once again, because I'm an empath, I'm an empathetic person, I was able to reach my students, and they opened up to me really relatively early. I think what I tell anybody interested in going into the profession is you set your boundaries, you be consistent, with your discipline, you be hard but fair. um and you'd be surprised how many children gravitate to you because they're lacking that type of structure at home. You give them that structure, and they'll run through a brick wall for you. I've seen it. I've been in the game long enough. I've known dynamic teachers to get that same result from their students. And so it's really, once again, it is about relationship building. You have to know your students on an individual level. There are. I remember, my first year teaching. It was, people would come. You go into the classroom with a hatchet, and everybody. No, it's not. You have to know them individually, because that way they get that personalized attention, that personalized instruction, because that child, that child's background, that child's, what their circumstance is, because that dictates the way you will reach out to them, the way you will deliver instruction to them, and that inevitably makes a successful teacher. I remember my grad school professor, her name was Dr. Jackie Body. She said something years ago that resonated with me. She was like, what we do is holy work. It is nothing less than holy work. And I took that to heart, because when you think about it, and this is what I tell my students now, you as a teacher, you have the power to make or break a child. And you want to be in the making a child business as opposed to the breaking a child business, because I've seen both. I've been in the school system long enough to see great teachers and really horrific teachers.
It's interesting that you were talking about the, distinction between horrific teachers and great teachers. And when you're dealing with DC public schools in particular, what would you say, particularly to the issue of discipline? Uh, Even as a great teacher, there's a recently there was a congressional hearing dealing with DC violence, and the mayor was asked about the problem that the congressman had said persisted for about 60 years, which is the breakdown of the family, which specifically centers around the breakup of the mom and dad, right? Where you don't have the dad as a part of that family, especially in that home. And thus, especially with boys, you don't have that male role model that has an organic relationship with the child to help with the discipline. How do you, as a teacher, how has that lack of discipline played out? And what would you say might be solutions to that problem?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I have to go back to my personal experience as a teacher because I was known as a disciplinarian. I didn't necessarily have many problems in my classroom. As a matter of fact, I was one of those teachers where teachers would send their problem, quote unquote, problem students to me to sort out, quote unquote. And it was more so, just with the understanding of human development and the development of the brain. It was more so understanding, once again, it goes back to relationship building. It goes back to, having, like, I'm going to respect you and you're going to respect me, and this is how this is going to go, and it's not going to go any other way, because I'm giving you that respect. I in turn am demanding it of myself. And so and so with that sort of foundation set, then you can start building that trust with your students. And then once that trust is built, then you go on to higher heights. And so, yeah, disciplinary issues, they mostly, if not all the time, they mostly stem from the home. And then they come into the school, and then you're confronted with issues that you yourself didn't necessarily create. And so it's hard enough to deal with those issues. And so you, as a teacher, want to make sure that you don't pile on additional issues by being a really ineffective teacher, and not someone that individual student feels like they can trust, that they can come to. Because once again, I always go back to it. It's all about relationship building. It really is.
So, as we look at these stats, talk about particularly how the racial disparities play out in terms of children who are disruptive. Data suggests that the number one indicator for whether a child is going to be disruptive the next day is whether that child had help with their homework the day before.
Mm.
We have proposed to the DC Council and government an idea for a universal after school program that would solve that issue. It would provide uh, coaching to students that could give them a opportunity to get their homework done first and foremost, get a good meal as well after. These centers, there was a glitch there. These centers could actually be inside the schools themselves. So it could either be in the schools or they could be.
Outside.
All right, Doc, I apologize. We
It's
were
all right.
glitching. Are you back with me?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
All right. I'm sorry. We are having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Are you back, Doc?
Yep. Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm fine. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great, great. It
Okay.
seemed like we were glitching there for a minute. But again, we were talking about this idea of universal after school, and specifically the idea I would prefer universal STEM after school programs, because not only would you get your homework done, you would be paired with a mentor like maybe yourself, that could give the child, or children some, experiments or some projects to work on, to kind of give them a kind of a trajectory of getting into the vocational skills areas, which are solid jobs that will allow people to be able to not have to go into a kind of entry level jobs, because they would be more skilled, if you will. What do you think about that as a proposition, Doc?
Yeah. And the actual the research literature would reflect that as well. That you would see those percentages drop down probably significantly with a program such as that. It would be, to me, it would be just and I think to most of the teachers, it would be a godsend, to be quite frank, in terms uh, um, of giving students that opportunity, whether it be in the school building or in the community, or however that looks, um, giving them that opportunity and that chance to be able to complete, whatever assignments, and have that one-on-one, or maybe, maybe not one-on-one, but at least that sort of um smaller education environment where they can get a more personalized attention. And then yeah, obviously you would definitely see those disciplinary infraction numbers decrease. I completely, I'm one that totally ascribes to that notion. And once again, it's shown in the literature that programs like that assist.
Excellent. So let me throw a last question to you as we talk about how challenging it is for parents to be able to support their children. And yeah, I know some parents, I'm just be candid, probably, even if they had money, they would be checked out, maybe watching,
Yeah.
YouTube, or not YouTube, but TikTok. I think
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
educated people watch YouTube, but it seems like a lot of folks,
YouTube
educated or
University.
not, are getting almost, yeah, I don't want to say brainwashed, but it's almost addicted
Yeah.
to these 1.5 minute, video clips
Yeah.
that just capture the attention and just suck you in. And I remember, just paying attention myself, and I was sucked in. But imagine being sucked in during the time that your, child is doing homework. And I say sucked in because it's truly that. You start watching the video feed, and then next thing you know, it's like an hour or two later, right? Or 3 hours or 4 hours later, and now the child has to go to bed. You know what I mean? We have a comment here will show up by Conspiracy Bro, who said they need a place to call teen sitters to be hosted with social work students for credit. That's a great idea, quite frankly.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
going to the issue of affordability, what do you think about a concept that one of the presidential candidates, Yang, came out with called universal basic income,
Yeah.
where everyone gets a basic income? So let's say, for example, we talked about the Whole Foods scenario. You're making about $24,000 a year. It would allow you to, at the end of the month, to get a plus up of around, let's say, $3,000. And so that could save you from having to get that, 3 shifts. You would now
Right.
just be able to do 2 shifts. That could hopefully allow you to, um, you know, situate yourself to where you can maybe pick up your child once or twice a week from school, and take them home, or you could attend some of the PTA meetings because you didn't have to work as much, and there would be requirements and bonuses. So if you were able to kind of go to the PTA meeting, you might get another amount.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you don't go to so many, your parent teachers conferences, which are valuable, as you could probably speak to this. I mean, how many students, parents who don't go to the parent teachers conference meeting, not the PTA meeting, but the parent teachers conference, where they can get firsthand communication about their own child. I mean, I'm sure the data suggests that, a high rate of those children whose parents don't come to the parent teachers conferences wind up having, significantly more problems than those parents don't. But let's just go back to the issue of universal basic income, a plus up, if you will, at the end of the month that may go straight to kind of your, almost work like a banking app. Where it hits your bank. What do you think about that as an innovative solution to affordability problems in DC, which also bleed into violence and crime?
Yeah. So I remember when I had first heard, I don't even think it was referred to as universal basic income at the time, but I remember when I had first read about that idea. It was several years ago, and two things came to my mind. I said, yeah, that would be great and helpful. And two, I this might be controversial. I the second thing I thought was the capitalists of the world would never go for it. I do believe that if there were true sort of oversight and just like you had mentioned, in terms of some way to check to make sure those monies are allocated in the correct way, I do believe that you would see, especially with parents who are really invested in their children's future and their education. I do believe you would see you would see more of a time investment into their education, and I do agree with you. And the statistics do point that out in terms of parents who, parents who come who are truly invested, who show up for parent teacher conferences and things of that nature. Their children do tend to have better and higher rates of success. So yeah, I am of the mind because I've been in DC. I'm a Washingtonian basically. Whatever helps is what we should do. Whatever is the good thing to do is what should be done, whatever that looks like. And I think definitely universal basic income should be one thing that should be seriously looked at, if not implemented. I mean, definitely, maybe it should be piloted somewhere, and just to see what how the results flesh out before being generally accepted. But however it should work, it should work.
And I think that's one of the things that we would like to see, and I think an innovative mayor of DC would do that. And the way it would work is all of us remember the time during COVID. A lot of us were out of work during the time period, right? And we all, those who worked, got money, got a check. Not even a check, but went straight to our banks. And that's how it would work. It's not rocket science. The government has already seen that we do it. And there's a lot of data that said that during that time period, parents were able to spend more time with their children. And I really think that had it been incentive based to also kind of toggle up and be able to toggle down, based upon outcomes based upon performance,
Yep.
we would have seen like this whole idea of the spike in violence, which was real, right?
Yeah.
Back in 2020 through 2022, there was a huge spike in violence. And a lot of that needs to be really studied. But I do think that while you had those parents who were being paid, if you had tied that to, actual involvement with their children, I think you would have seen a less spike, if any spike at all.
I guarantee you would. Yeah.
If people were literally, if they knew that their money that they needed to survive, right, was dependent upon them being involved, I'm almost guaranteed that you'd have a significant participation rate. What do you think about
Agreed. Definitely agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look, I know we have gone over, and this has been a tremendously exciting conversation, brother. But again, if you have not already, that you have an opportunity to meet our special guest, actually, and we want you to take advantage of that opportunity by going and actually giving a look at the website that we have that allows people to sign up for our wonderful program, which is taking place at tomorrow at 3:00. Go on the website, which is Abe Legal, to the Howard Homecoming Summit 2025, and register. You have 18 hours, 35 minutes left, and 34 minutes, and it is an opportunity for you to meet our special guests and other wonderful visionaries, where we are talking about these issues of how we can end youth violence, how we can make DC affordable, and how we can finally win DC statehood. Dr. Isaac, it's been a blessing. Do you have any last comments to add before we conclude for the evening?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you so much. Been a great conversation. I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you tomorrow in person, and hopefully continuing this type of positive discourse, about the state of DC, and I mean that literally and figuratively, the state of our home. So yeah, just I once again I thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing in terms of putting this program together during homecoming, because look, homecoming shouldn't just be about the parties, and we should be about the work, and I think tomorrow's function will go far into promoting that type of work.
I totally agree, and I saw that one of my former managers at the Blackburn Auditorium, not Blackburn, but the Crampton, Blackburn Center, not the Blackburn Auditorium, Blackburn Center. I used to be a student worker there at the front desk, which was one of the best jobs to actually have on campus.
Sure it was.
Because you
saw everything.
For two things, right? To know what was happening. And I mean, and like everything happens at the Student Center. You see the president, you see all the special guests. Everything goes down at the Blackburn Center. And then also there are a lot of receptions. And man, as a starving student, boy, that was a lifesaver for me. And one of my managers was Keith Jenkins, and he wrote a little note. And so, Brother Keith, we ask that you go ahead and also register. We would love to have you. And it would be great to see all of our wonderful colleagues again for Howard Homecoming. We're looking forward to, of course, being on the yard, but we hope that we can, do some sharing of information before we socialize, or we can do it at the same time. We got to solve these problems. We got to end this violence. We have to address the issues of affordability. And we got to win statehood. This is kind of being a yo-yo for Congress and for the federal government. It's not helping. It's not even helping the federal government, We need to be stabilized, and I think our young people deserve it. Our businesses deserve it, and by having this state structure, we would be able to do it. So I appreciate you, conspiracy brother Keith.
I love that hashtag, by the way, conspiracy, bro.
He is a DC homeowner, formerly from New York, but he implanted himself here in DC, and we're looking forward to getting as many of people like you to come and join us tomorrow at 3 p.m. at our location down off of 15th and K. So without any further ado, we will bid you good night. Thank you so much, dear brother, for your wonderful work. Keep it up, all right?
I look, got no choice, man. Got to got to keep it up, man. Got to keep going.
All right. Well, that was a wonderful conversation with Dr. Isaac. Again, if you have any comments, don't hesitate to drop them in the comment feed even after tonight's podcast. And we strive to make sure we follow up and respond. If you are not a subscriber, please subscribe to this channel. Please share it with your friends and family. We want to get over 1,000 views, and we want to get over 1,000 subscribers, and we can get there with your support. And let's continue, as my father, Dr. Talib Karim Muhammad, used to say, let's work together and let's win together. This is attorney Talib Karim Muhammad, and this has been the Re-Engineer DC podcast. And I wish you happy homecoming 2025 and a wonderful day or evening wherever you might be. Peace.